Hello, welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage, on a interesting January day. It was gray this morning, then it was sunny, then we had a snow squall, left everything white. The sun came out and melted it, and then the wind picked up and the temperature is plummeting, and we're supposed to get snow before dawn tomorrow morning. But January's pretty much out the door, so it's okay. I started last night. Well, I guess it started last fall. My buddy Charlie was cleaning out his shop, and he brought me a whole bucket of miscellaneous metal. And when I saw this piece of octagon, I thought to myself, that looks like a fuel log. If I ever have to make one, I got raw material. It's kind of bunged up on either end, but the beauty of being six-sided is it fits in a three-jaw chuck, or I guess it would fit in a six-jaw chuck if you had one on the lathe, but I have a three-jaw chuck, and I was able to put it in there. And I did not have the correct fittings. The Holley Terminator Stealth 4500 throttle bodies have -8 AN inlet fittings, 4 of them, on the throttle bodies. So I needed a way to get from my single line regulator to all 4 inlets on the throttle bodies. So doing the math, 8 AN is 1/2 inch, because that'd be 8/16. AN is in 16th, so divided, do the math on that, it's 1/2. So the drill size for a 3/8 NPT National Pipe Thread tap is 9/16. So it's bigger than the required size. So a 3/8 NPT fitting is acceptable size-wise. It's bigger than you need, which is always a good thing. And these are only -6 on this side. I have -8s coming, and the -8s that I bought, the hex to tighten them is actually smaller, so I knew, well, I didn't know what I knew. First thing I did is cut off the bad ends, and I could have left a little more meat over here because I didn't think ahead. I thought at first I'd be putting 2 and 2 on 2 different flats, and then eyeballing it on the intake manifold, on the Profiler tunnel ram, on the 496 big block, going in the 47 Ford pickup. I could have used a little more real estate. This is going to be my inlet fitting. It'll be -8 over from the regulator. I could mount the regulator right on it, but I don't think I will. I think I'm going to mount it on the frame or somewhere off the engine. So there'll be an inlet. On this end, I went ahead, I only bored 9/16 all the way to about the last 3/4 of an inch. And then I drilled and tapped it for my fuel pressure sender. That's going to go in the end. And then it came time this morning. I came out and worked on a little bit last night and completed the lathe portion of the project. Then it came time to lay out this morning, the 3/8 fittings. And again, these are only -6, but they're going to be 8. But it worked out. It's not perfect. I could have spread them out even a little more, but again, when my -8 by 3/8 MPT show up, they should have a smaller hex, and that'll make them even easier to go in. But they do fit, and you got room to tighten them up, so that'll work. That'll be the inlet. I have 2 3/8 pipe taps. One was kind of dull. The other one I found was really sharp, and it did a good job. Kind of ran out of space going in this way, but they're going to work out just fine. Pipe thread is tapered. You can go too deep. You can go too shallow. In this case, I went as deep as I possibly could. This particular sender I picked up in a bunch of Holley stuff I got. It's SSI Technologies. They have a website. And using the website, I was able to decipher the part number. This is only a 50-pound PSI sender. not enough. Technically, it would be enough for my 43 pounds of fuel pressure, but I've ordered from Lodell, the Motorsports, 100-pound. 2 of them, one for my oil pressure and one for my fuel pressure. That way, if you ever turn it up, I don't want to be stuck at 50 pounds, have my sender not read correctly. So I drilled and tapped this end 1/8 pipe, which the senders are. And whatever you want to put these senders in, like for instance, LS engine, they have an adapter from the metric thread on the cylinder head of the block to these 1/8 pipe sensors. So that was pretty much done, and then I needed to mount it on the intake manifold. This is just after lunch today. I did a terrible job of keeping up with the project, so I'm recapping now. I forgot to tell you when I was laying out these, this is a center punch. I found one that fit right in the center so I could accurately mark out my holes, well, semi-accurately anyway. You can't see it from wherever you're at. Anyway, it looks pretty good. I made a little bracket. I had to make a little clearance for the throttle linkage. This is going to bolt right on the manifold top that I built. In fact, this bracket is a piece of the leftover aluminum I bought to build the top of the tunnel ring. So I was limited once again on depth, how far I could attach the screws attaching the bracket to the log. So I did not have, the only bottom and tap I have, I think, is 3/8, way too big. I have a 1/4 inch bottom and tap for a different project on the way, not here yet. But I did have an 832 fine thread tap, and using the 1/4 inch I was able to bore in, I was able to get a decent thread, and then I found these 3 832 conical head screws, recessed the holes, and that made, I only have 3 of these screws. It worked out that way, but after I made room for the heads of the bolt, they were too long now. I was going to try to shorten them, and then I decided just to put 3 little AN washers underneath. It actually worked out really nice, and I'm going to Loctite those, and that'll be permanent until such time it isn't, I guess. But I laid out these 2 bolts, which should go on the corners of my intake manifold that hold my manifold top on. I used the same piece of cardboard that when I laid out the manifold top, I saved it. The holes were all punched. Easy transfer, so I'm expecting to go over and be able to bolt this on the manifold. So let's go take a look at it, and then I'll tell you what I'm going to do for lines. So give me just a minute to hopefully slap this on. And we're back. It actually fits. It required no modifications. If it did, I'd tell you. My plan for lines is I was able to buy, I bought a 10-pack of the 3/8 to -8 straight fitting, the silver, happens to be that way. And I mentioned the hex is smaller, so it should be easier. And you can buy Fragola, that's a brand, a popular hose brand, quality. You can buy the crimped lines, like, all the fancy guys are using. I don't have a $3,000 or $4,000 crimper to make my own, so I could put my PTFE lines together myself. I did a video on that if you want to look back in the playlist. But go on eBay, you can buy the lines by inches. It's funny, the length of the line does not change the price one bit. They're all around $30 a piece, so I had to buy 4 lines. And you got to choose the size that they have available. So I bought 2 14-inch and 2 24-inch, thinking my carburetors were slightly less than 10 inches apart. We'll see how that works out. My plan is to run the outside ones, loop it to the front throttle body, I think, or the back, it doesn't really matter. And the inside ones, I don't know, maybe I'll put them all down the middle of the manifold in the V here. Without them in my hand, it's hard to tell, but one way or the other, worst case scenario, I'll have to 45 or 90. I think the 14-inch are going to be kind of short for the front. The rear should be just right, if not a little bit long, and that's okay. So I had to trim my little bracket. If you notice, it's got a V shape. so that linkage can drop right down there, which it does. That all works good. Like I mentioned, I bought 2 Low Dollar Motorsports 100 PSI senders. Super easy. Go on their website. Again, not sponsored. Just I'm happy when I'm treated fairly and like to pass it on. You pick the sensor you want. They don't have that many products, so it's not overwhelming. And the shipping was free, and they're already halfway here. I ordered them yesterday morning. So after I determined this wasn't right, 50 PSI, I'll put it in my coolant port somewhere on my Turbo LS project. They'd be good for that. It would tell you a rising spike before things went bad. Well, as things were going bad, I guess. So I'll find a use for that. It has a package, I believe it's a 150 connector, which is most of your Holley stuff does. I've mentioned it before, but just to recap, I hate doing this, but sometimes got to get everybody up to speed. I did not buy the entire Terminator Stealth throttle body kit. It's almost $4,000. Instead, during a Holley sale last fall, I stole these throttle bodies, literally. They set the price, not me. I wish I bought more pairs of them. Now that I actually have them in my hands, it was 2 or 3 months of uneasiness. I had the primary, not the secondary. I have the primary on the back for clearance. So I'm piecing it together. So I had to buy the main harness or try to make my own. The main harness was just over $400. It is what it is, but what I find really cool, this is the whole thing, if you can see it. If my hand's the firewall and all that's hidden, this is all that's under the hood to run the whole engine. It has my distributor, both throttle bodies. Here I have the O2 sensor, coolant temp sensor, oil pressure, and fuel pressure. And they happen to have a packet connector as well, so it's going to plug right in. I won't need that. It'll plug right in there. So slicker than heck. And so I used a factory coolant temp sensor. It's actually out of the Ilmor program. Also has the same connector, so relatively simple. So this harness will also lay down in the V of the manifold, but that's all I got to hide. So that's pretty cool if you ask me. I've been picking away at a few more things on the old 496. I'll take you on a tour. I put the distributor in, made the plug wires, ran them as neatly as possible, finalized the throttle linkage. The throttle bodies are all tight. I found these Bryke, B-R-Y-K, I have to look that up, B-R-Y-K-E. Anyway, they're out of Arkansas. Made in America. They were less than 20 bucks a piece on eBay. They're storage caps. But what I saw was a piece of aluminum. Spun, it's pretty cool. It's got a nice step on it. If I was to cut that off, turn it around, my air filter might fit on there. If I fail cutting the other pieces I have, they're so pretty, it's a shame to modify them. But again, I got, with shipping, 40 bucks in both of them. And I do have the other set of throttle bodies to cover up, you know, eventually. So while this is sitting around, it's kind of handy. And I don't know. I like looking at them, I guess, but I couldn't resist. These just came. They're still cold. Been on the UPS truck. Before I put the intake manifold on for good a week ago, I drilled and tapped it. Beautiful aluminum. It actually tapped really nice. 1/8 inch pipe. Bought a 90-degree barb fitting and ran a piece of 3/8 fuel line, fuel vacuum line over to the PCV valve. That's done. The Holley dual sync, I'm still waiting on a clamp. I used them all. I tried to run the wires as neat as I could. I had this set of fast fuel injection big block Chevy underheader wires. So they're made to go just like this underneath. And then that's just a 3/8 bolt I thread into the cylinder head to tie the wires to. Ran a few separators, and I like doing the wire tie trick here with my cheap wire ties. So it ends up looking decent. I'll end up tying the miscellaneous wiring probably to the fuel line, so it kind of blends You won't see these ugly plugs. They'll be tucked around behind. Throttle linkage works nice. On the side, as I mentioned, this will be dash 8 or maybe dash 10 over to the regulator, which is probably going to mount over on the frame, which is over here. So that was a fun project out of an actual pretty beat up piece of scrap, which turned out to be perfect for what I wanted to do. I shopped around, didn't see anything as compact that's going to accomplish what I want to do. I think it'll be okay. The fun part's building it. You got to take the time because it takes a while. And you got to stop, look up the proper drill size for the correct tap, etc. You don't want to mess that up. I guess if I did, I'd just ruin a piece of scrap. But that's it for today. Hope you're staying warm, having fun. Talk to you soon.